All right, welcome back to Design Huddle. Today we are going to be talking about ways to improve retail websites. So this is going to be kind of like a catch-all for if you work with customers, clients, or you own in your, any sort of you're selling anything online. This episode is for you. So we'll start from the top. Before full disclosure, whenever you're doing feature changes or you're tweaking a retail site, I would always encourage A/B testing. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We could probably do an entire episode of what a good A/B test looks like. But basically that means before you roll something out, being confident that it's actually something that's going to add value to your end users / customers. With that being said, the first problem that you're going to want to solve is, does my site provide what the user wants? And there's a few ways to think about this. The number one thing is that you need a clear call to action and value prop. So when you land on the page, especially if you're like let's pretend we're like a new hat brand, because we love talking about hats. We were starting a hat company. We need to figure out in the first 5 seconds, what are the benefits to me, as a potential customer? Like, what can your hats offer me that other hats don't? Mustafa, I know you've done a ton of web design. Like, when you're thinking about creating that good above the fold experience, desktop, mobile, what are some other things that come top of mind for you?
The main thing, I suppose, is like what the main call to action is. Like, so a while back, I was working on something called the payment request API, which is a thing in Chrome. And the idea was, I think it was what they called Amazon's $1 million button, when they actually basically created a buy now button, and that made them become profitable. And so like a lot of the stuff that we're working on is how can we make guest checkout really quick and possible, because it's weird. The first iterations of like e-commerce sites basically were asking for so much upfront from the user that there's no comparable user experience in the real world. Like, you walk into a shop, you pick something up, you decide you want it, and then you just take it and put your credit card and go. Occasionally you might be harangued for like, would you like a store card or whatever, and if depending on the sign up process of that, you might sign up if it's really quick and easy. Otherwise you say, nah, I'm too busy. But what's weird is the first set of e-commerce sites, you try to buy something and then it's like, we need your name, we need your location, we need all this information that was purely gathered for marketing purposes rather than for the purpose of helping the person get through the checkout really quickly. So when we were doing this new API, it was like, okay, let's leave all of that silliness aside. Let the person get through the checkout, because that's the most important thing for the business. And guest checkout, companies always see improvements on that. So again, it's like, if your goal is to sell stuff, then sell stuff, and think about how can I sell stuff easily. And so like guest checkout is number one. Like, I remember I think it may have been Domino's Pizza. Like, they had the most amazing guest checkout, and I liked it so much I signed up for an account. And that to me was like, right, they've not tricked me, but they've enticed me, because I've so liked the way that it was easy just to get. And people don't think about pizza places.
Yeah, I mean, Domino's is known for, from the second you start the process to and they get your payment, they tell you exactly where the pizza is.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
The cook is putting it in the oven. They're boxing your pizza. It's out for delivery. They're 5 minutes away. It's at your door. You know what I mean? It's just like this real-time update experience. You know exactly where your pizza is.
But it's a form of is a form of e-commerce site. If you think about if e-commerce site is someone who's just making a transaction, buying a product or service, I think that they were to me, pioneers of how you do it correctly. And obviously stuff like Uber Eats, which you wouldn't think as an e-commerce site in a sense, but they've mastered the experience and of how you can buy something. And I think that's where the innovation always seems to happen outside of the industry. You think that taxi companies should have had the perfect billing experience. They've been doing it for years. It took people who had no knowledge on the core business of driving a cab to completely disrupt the whole industry. And I think Amazon as well. It's like Amazon was just selling books, but now they sell everything as a storefront. So I think, going back to your original question, it's just make always write down on a whiteboard, sticky paper, whatever. What is it that you're actually trying to get people to do? Forget everything else. What is the main focus? And then look at your site and say, right, is this thing actually being achieved? Like, can people just buy stuff? And it seems obvious, but you know, the challenge that a lot of companies have and agencies is there's a lot of bureaucracy and organization that gets in the way. It's like, we need this part of the site. It's like, no, you will need to sell stuff. So and make that experience so delightful that people will remember your website and automatically think, right, I want to buy flowers. This is the site I want to go to. Or
yeah, no, and I mean, another like one of the points that you hit on was this ability to have like a clear value prop, answer the user's need, and also evolve. You know, do things a little bit differently. I remember when I was helping they were like another on-demand delivery service company. It was like a startup.
Yeah.
And I was advising them, and they had tons of products. I would say hundreds of products, but they didn't have a search bar. So one of the first simple features that we did was we added a search bar to, you know, the anchored menu at the top of the page. You know, again, we got into this in previous conversations. It would still look like a tennis racket / magnifying glass as the universal search icon. That's besides the point. They put one on, users could click it in, and then they also used Smart Suggest or Auto Suggest, which is actually a great way that because you can put your products in and people can kind of start typing and they can get recommendations right out of the box. It was insanely beneficial for a lot of reasons. One is that not only did like cart size increase, people bought more, there was less bounces, there was more registered users. All of their core metrics improved because of a simple thing like search. Because you can imagine that if you're on a site and you're not really sure what you want, there's different types of people. There's people that would go to a site and they would know exactly what they want. There's people that are just browsing. So for that browsing use case or persona, it's important to kind of cast a wide net to make sure that like you can help them find exactly what they're looking for, and making sure along the way you're highlighting the clear benefits. Oh, new users, new customers, you know, free shipping on orders over $50 is by far one of the most common. That value prop is usually, you know, pinned to the top of the page. So, you know, as you're going through the process, you feel like you're getting a deal. There's that instant gratification, like where I'm saving money. This is like, I'm okay with making this purchase. So there's actually a lot more psychology that gets into this, you know, than I initially ever expected. But the bottom line is that I guess the takeaway from that particular example is if you have a bunch of stuff, organizing it is always a good idea. Sometimes just creating categories in a hamburger menu isn't enough. So integrating search is an easy way to make it easier for people to find exactly what they're looking for, and helping them avoid dead ends, where a dead end typically is just someone leaving the site.
So what do you think? And that's what I was going to ask you actually. So what do you do in situations where someone's looking for a product but they don't, you know, because spelling can sometimes go wrong, or maybe the stuff is out of stock and someone searched something and then they get no results. What would you say from your experience would be the recommended thing for designers or developers to do at that point?
Yeah, my favorite one was that if someone had usually now if you have a typo, it'll autocorrect and kind of, it's smart enough, the search engine is smart enough to figure it out. For like, you know, most of these sites, it's just like a third-party plugin that they work kind of out of the box. But one of my favorite ways to execute this is actually if there's null results, you actually provide the most popular items on the site. So it's like, you know, if you're a clothing company and, you know, somebody types in hats, but all your hats are sold out, you give them to the top selling shirts. So that their journey isn't over. They're still looking at something, and if you want to almost guarantee someone's going to leave or go back, it's, you know, 0 results found or something.
Provide them with nothing, basically. So, provide them opportunity to leave.
An empty search is basically the same as a 404 in my eyes.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's almost like the Wikipedia thing. It's like try and keep someone clicking not indefinitely, but at least try to allow them to land on something that will commit to whatever they were actually doing. Now, that's quite interesting. I in direct e-commerce sites, I don't have that much experience apart from some of the partners and consultancy stuff that I did a bit of on the e-commerce side.
Well, one of the things that I think you would be able to, like, from your payment history though, is good e-com experiences also understand that users don't have unlimited time.
Yeah.
So prioritizing a user and so one metric people look at is time on site. And time on site, if it's too high, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good experience.
Yeah.
So one company I've worked with, we actually decreased time on site because we added a pay integration where you click a button, basically it's like one tap, and then you skip the checkout process and it's 2 clicks and you're done. So that immediately expedited the most painful part of the process. So there's little things like that you can nudge the customer in the right direction. And I think that the number one thing that I think is missed is a lot of times in these meetings, designers are not getting a seat at the table.
Yeah.
It's business and product managers making the decisions when there's really kind of smart design decisions that can be made to ultimately impact these 5 business goals that everyone's driving towards. So yeah, I mean that's just, I mean, I think so. What my question to you is there any other ways that you can simplify a site to make it feel more seamless and less clunky?
Yeah, so when you said see it, I remember someone telling a famous designer telling a joke, which I'm going to put. It's the reason why it's designers always want a seat at the table, which explains why there's so many chairs in design museums. I think it's words to that effect, which it just made me laugh because that always resonates with designers. The other to answer your question about, I remember when I was doing when I used to do a lot of design reviews back in the day. Of a really major US retailer. And one thing I didn't consider is they didn't actually ship outside of the US, but it was 40 steps to actually buy something. From the moment where you find it, add it to cart, adding all these details, and it's only till the end that I realized, we don't ship because it'll say zip code and there's no drop down to change the country. And you think to yourself, what a waste of time. There's so much clever things that you can do from an engineering perspective, and a lot of these things are engineering things. So IP detection to say, all right, this person, we can't ship to this person. Say, are you sure we only ship to the US or whatever? And be cognizant that a lot of use cases will not be what you experience in your studio or whatever. It's going to be all manner of things. And so there was I wrote an article. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out. The user fudged experience article, and it was a story that a friend of mine, Gordon, who again I hope to get him on the podcast at some point in the future. He told me about how you figure out these experiences. I'm not sure. Maybe I have mentioned this to you. So there was McDonald's were trying to create a new milkshake. Because they thought we want to make a much more sweeter milkshake. And here's the thing: when you already have this predefined idea and you take it to a usability study, what are you going to do? You're going to make all variations of milkshakes, some sweeter than the others, and then you go to people, which one is the sweetest one? And they're going to tell you which one is the sweetest one. They're not going to tell you what they actually need. So McDonald's, they did the study, they got a sweeter milkshake, but they didn't see any sale change. So then they hired a consultant, Clayton, I believe his name was something. And he basically sat in a McDonald's 18 hours a day and just observed what people were doing, seeing what the behavior is. And what he found was between the time of 6:30 and 8:30 in the morning, that's when most of the milkshakes were being sold, which was what's going on? And so he actually started pulling people up on the second day and goes, why are you buying this? And they were a bit sheepish, kind of embarrassed to say, well, listen, I've got a long commute in New York to get to work. I need a breakfast, but I don't want something that's going to be consumed straight away because I know I'll get hungry at 10 o'clock. So I want something that will be slow for the hour-long commute. And the best thing, or as he described as getting the job done, was a milkshake because you can't drink it. It's too cold. It's really thick in the straw. And so basically they were hiring the milkshake to do a job of breakfast because there wasn't much alternative at that time in the morning. And that was the epiphany moment. So, okay, McDonald's, you're solving the wrong problem. You're trying to say, how do we sell more milkshakes? You first have to understand why are people hiring a milkshake in the first case. And so they brought the ice cream machine close to the front to make it easier to sell, so people can, all right, it's just there, I can buy it really quickly because morning commute. Then they started introducing the breakfast bars and the breakfast shakes and whatever, and they saw sales go up 7-fold. So to take it back to the e-commerce stuff, you have to observe what people are doing. Sometimes this design sprints are great, and those workshops when you definitely know what the problem is and you want to test what the problem is and come up with a step-by-step usability solution. what they don't do is tell you why someone's necessarily doing something. And like ethnographic studies is where you observe people, which take a long time. And so the experience of me going through this massive retailer, no one actually observed people going, like, from my opinion, it didn't look like anyone was observing anyone from different backgrounds buying stuff day in, day out. And so if you really want to understand what people are doing, you have to observe them. Like, surveys are good on scale, but they'll show you what's going on. They won't tell you why. Face to face, you'll be able to explore why, but you can't do them on scale. So ethnographic studies over a period of time, I think, are really useful from that point of view. Because sometimes...
I related to that. I remember looking, again, I'm like a little bit of like a analytics nerd when it comes to UX, but like I remember looking in the data and like analytics. I literally filtered by like which page had the highest exit rate. So people would go on the page and leave. One page was like 95%.
Oh, wow.
And it was because like the page was just like, it would take you to like, it wasn't a 404. It was just like the page would serve, but it would basically be a blank page. And people would immediately leave the site. But it was such a good thing to find because just by fixing that, which is essentially a bug, right? I'm describing a bug. But that's another thing of what you're getting at, is that you understand the user's journey, you understand where the pain point is, and then you prioritize it and you fix it. So like a lot of times it's so funny because we go and put all these bell whistles. I want push notifications, search bars, like I want all of the newest like APIs. But at the end of the day, you just need to figure out like, where are people coming in, why are they staying, and where are they leaving?
Yeah.
If you can kind of hone in on those three things, then you can figure out which milkshake you want. You know what I mean? Then you can figure out why people are coming to the site. Most people are not coming to the site, for what you think a lot of the times. But I love that McDonald's example for a lot of reasons. It also makes me really want a milkshake, so we should probably get milkshakes the next time we record. But I do love that story, and I think it's very relevant because one of the best UX designers I've ever worked with, they always, like, especially when you do design sprints, when you're focusing on a very specific problem, they are relentless at making everyone come back to that problem. And you don't kind of get sidetracked by all these other like secondary and tertiary issues. So yeah, I mean, do you have any other examples, or is there any experiences that like you particularly think are like really well done? Like, I mean, let's be honest. In the pandemic, there's been a lot more online shopping. This was a huge opportunity for companies to prioritize a good mobile web and web experience because everyone's sitting at home online.
Yeah.
So I think some companies really took advantage of this, and ultimately it's going to set them up for success. I have a few in my head, but I'd love to hear what companies or brands do you think did particularly well during COVID to separate themselves from some maybe their competition?
I think like Uber Eats is the one which I really like their experience, because they really focus on what you're trying to actually do. And if you have to, I mean, what's interesting about them is you're not just designing how to buy stuff, you're designing how to get people who are really hungry through an actual experience. And when people are hungry, they're like, I think there's a term called hangry, where it's like people get really frustrated. And so you're thinking about the actual state of the person rather than, well, like, how can we make the buy button bouncy and blue? So that's quite interesting. Like the food delivery services, Amazon obviously are very, very good at it because they optimize like really extensively. There's the flower store, which I always call it 1-800. Is it 1800 flowers? It's 1-800 flowers, right? Which is
1-800 flowers.
I always call them 1800 flowers, and then people in America are just laughing because that's not what it's called. Their experiences are pretty cool in terms of getting someone through checkout really well, and they optimize for that quite heavily. But yeah, no, so those kind of experiences are really good.
So I have some other examples for you. I want to know if you've seen any of them. So this digital agency called Digital Silk basically recently reviewed some of the top companies that improved their designs during COVID. So I'll read the top 5, and I've used probably 2 of the 5. But the first was IKEA. Everyone knows IKEA.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
IKEA's online sales have reached double what they did a year ago during COVID-19 crisis. No surprise here that furniture companies and home furnishing companies have been through the roof as people are tired of staring at their couches.
Yeah, absolutely.
In some countries, including Denmark, IKEA's e-commerce sales are close to 10 times pre-pandemic levels. Digital Silk credits innovations such as launched advanced virtual showrooms with mobile and deep learning.
Yeah.
So I've seen this before where like you can take a photo of your room and then you can take the couch and drop it in.
Yeah.
So this is an example of IKEA being like, we're not only going to just do good web design best practices, but we're going to integrate new technologies like,
but
AI.
they're known for that though. So like I think we've spoken about this before, where they're known to do the ethnographic studies and observe people in their home. And although they don't call themselves a technology company, the way they design their furniture, like the chargeable surfaces and stuff, they put it in specific places because they know that's where people place their devices. And again, it's that wrapping the experience around the people thing that we've spoken about quite a few times now. So they're known for that. And also, the way you know there's genius is when you look at the directions of assembling their flat pack. There's no written word. That is genius, like to me. And they design the actual screw fixings in a way that you cannot mix them up. I was going to start singing Rick Ashley again. I don't know why. They cannot let you down, and they keep you, and whatever.
So this is my take on IKEA. I think the products are very well designed, but the product materials I think are the number one reason why I have since moved on past my post-college days. I just didn't feel like if I'm buying a piece of furniture and I want it to last forever, I typically wouldn't go to IKEA. But I totally agree with you that the amount of engineering and thought that goes into their products, it's no surprise that this carried over into the website.
Now, if you want to buy good stuff, we're talking about IKEA. You want to buy the good stuff, you have to pay a bit. That where solid proper wood. That stuff is really. I mean, but you're paying for it. But even though the light fittings, but you can see that. There seems to be, with IKEA, just love in their design when you go to their showrooms. There's everything is really well engineered. But anyways, let's look at some of the other examples that you've mentioned.
Yeah. So moving on. This one's very similar to what we already talked about, so we'll just quickly touch on this. Papa John's, arguably Domino's biggest competitor in the U.S. Pizza delivery as a whole has gone up during the pandemic, but Papa John's has had the most digital success by offering features such as no-contact delivery, a smooth online ordering process, and a Papa Track tool that allows customers to keep tabs of their orders. I think that Domino's did this first. I think Papa John, as a result, had to compete and have like a mirroring feature and functionality. Also, a lot of companies, like this was similar to Uber Eats, this no contact delivery where people really didn't want to interact was a smart move, right? Where people could just drop their bag of food outside their door. They didn't have to actually talk to anybody. They could get the bag, and then, this was during the time where people were like, sanitizing the food bags and whatnot.
I think the feature of being able to observe your delivery driver, because people are hungry and agitated, and they want to be informed. Again, it's like it's a perception of speed talk, which I give, where if you show a blank screen, that's really bad. If you show a spinner, that's really bad. But if you show progress, even if it's slow, then a person right, I can just go to the bathroom quickly, wash my hands. Okay, I know I'm not going to miss the person. Again, it's that reassurance thing. So you can imagine someone choosing one delivery service company over another simply for that feature, because then it's like peace of mind. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that one's kind of very similar to what you already were hitting on Domino's. So the next one, this one is always the top. I think this is a good example of a product that their in-store experience tries to reflect the digital experience. So the next one's Nike. Nike boosted e-commerce performance by waiving online fees. The subscription program behind digital services such as the Nike Plus app, and providing free access to fitness classes and other resources. So Nike basically said, listen, we are a fitness brand. People are at home. So what can we do to build more loyalty and trust? Let's open it up and have free classes, free subscriptions to these premium workouts to help people like with their mental health. It's brilliant, because then you're associating Nike with a fitness health first company the next time you're thinking about purchasing something.
That's becoming quite a big thing in America, right? Because there's like the company, was it Pentathlon? It's like
Peloton?
That's the one. It's like social media meets exercise.
Biking, yeah. I mean, it's insane, the Peloton culture in the U.S., because it's another company that did.
I bet they hit at the right time.
But
they hit at the right time,
they came to. It's like in terms of like business development. You think about go-to-market plans. You can't. I mean, it's a shame they were fortunate to make the most of a very bad situation, absolutely. Obviously, but people were, if you were going to spend money, people were obviously being cautious about what they spent money on. but people were splurging on home fitness because if you're stuck in your house and you don't feel like you can't get outside as much, that was the only way people could maintain their sanity.
Yeah.
So Peloton is very similar to Nike. And that's also why there's so much of these like fit tech companies that have come up of late. But I love this, tying it back to e-com. Nike Plus app also gives you the way to like go back and buy products that the instructor sees. Peloton does the same thing. Well, they always wear their Peloton shirts and Peloton pants and Peloton shoes and Peloton weights. So the next time you associate it and you're like, oh, I need a new tank top, you go to their site to buy it. So this is just a smart play overall, offering something free to get up funnel to ultimately convert more people down funnel. Cool. Next one, Williams-Sonoma, the leading retailer of kitchen tools and appliances, taking advantage of surging consumer interest in cooking, baking by enhancing its digital customer experience through operational improvement and tech innovation. So this is kind of fluffy. They didn't really say anything specific here, but no surprise, people are cooking more. I think what they did is, like, if I remember going to Williams-Sonoma's site, they just cleaned it up. It's much easier. It's very fast too. I believe in terms of performance. The last time I was on there, and the checkout process is like couldn't be easier. So they made small tweaks to make it better. But I mean, have you ever been on Williams-Sonoma? Is that a US brand?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure familiar. They might be in the UK. One thing I just had a bit of the epiphany moment. Do you think the fact that a lot of the engineers and designers were stuck at home started to empathize with people, and then, like, again, this is like, it could be, it's not based on any evidence, but if you see that these experiences have been proven, it's like, I had to order some IKEA stuff when you're working for IKEA and you think, this is such a pain, like, wouldn't it be great if blah, and then because the makers become the users and they start to empathize, because not everyone's internet connectivity is going to be amazing, not everyone's tech up, especially in the first few months, for sure was not going to be great. And suddenly you start realizing who you're designing for. Perhaps, again, I get it. It's all hypothetical, but I wonder if that helped, especially the companies which was enabling people to just do stuff for themselves, like you're building your own furniture, or this cooking for yourself, or like providing your own fitness instruction type stuff, like being your own health instructor. Right. I wonder if that was fueled by the makers who were in that situation. Which would
I think it's a great hypothesis. I would say yes. I mean, without any data to back it up, it sounds very.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, right? Like imagine if we were at those companies, right, and we were designing these, and we're in those situations. It's always easier to build things if you can empathize with the customers or the users. A lot of times, products that don't land well, you get people that don't understand the market you're trying to go after. So I totally agree that there was just like this. For one of the first, in our lifetime, everyone was on the same page, right? Like, regardless of your upbringing, background, ethnicity, we were all in the same boat together, and we had to figure it out together, which, hopefully one thing that we can take away from this awful period was that there's a little bit more empathy for people that come from different situations. And empathy from a design perspective is one of the most important skills that people don't emphasize enough.
Yeah. But then also we also have to always acknowledge that we're never our users. Although I imagine, again, this is our guesswork, which, it might be convenient because it's like we're at the end of the tunnel, so we're trying to shape what's happened.
Right.
But it's always important to try and really observe. You're not always going to be our users, but I think the pandemic has allowed for like eureka moments or like epiphany moments for a lot of designers and developers.
For sure.
It's, just performance, that you realize that even if you're not on the mobile web, not everyone's internet connection is going to be great. You've got multiple connections happening at the same time, people streaming, homeschooling, and you've got to do stuff and order stuff online. Patience is weighing thin. Like, all these things do contribute. So yeah, no, I mean, these are good tips, I think. And e-commerce is not my strongest space.
Last one, what was that?
E-commerce is not my biggest thing, but
that was like that's why I was like pick the topic, because it's one of my bread and butters. But last one, just to kind of bring it all home, and then we'll summarize some of our top tips.
Yeah.
But Drizzly, which I don't believe is in the UK because it's only in the US right now, but it's basically Uber Eats for alcohol, the digital marketplace for alcohol that works with local retailers that has been experienced dramatic growth in sales. The week of March 30th, Drizzly's sales were up almost 500% over its baseline of 8 weeks prior. Approximately 40% of recent orders have been from new customers. Again, another company, right time, right
Yeah.
place, but they did improve the experience significantly. Like I remember using it back in the day, and I just could not use it. But it's a phenomenal, like the experience that I've used it in the past. It's very similar to Uber Eats, easy to find.
Do you know what's really interesting? Like, I was doing my own, like, there's a course which I created on Skillshare, which is like a free course that anyone can sign up with. And when you're creating a course, trying to teach the principles of UX, I come up with this fake app, which was like Uber Eats, but for coffee. And I kept thinking, this would never fly, because why would someone want to do that? And then what I noticed during the pandemic is people still wanted these, like, premium coffees, like the lattes with the syrups. And so a lot of these coffee companies were partnering up with Uber Eats or equivalents to actually do the coffee delivery. And I was like, man, if I had just done this startup on my own.
Well, there's another, it's so funny because there's like the Uber for X,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
For everything. But well, there's two things. One is that people, I heard someone talk about like, what about Uber Eats or like Uber for trucking, where like the truck has to go pick stuff up. I was like, that's not Uber trucking. That's just trucking. Like that's what you're supposed to do. They go to a location,
DHS or
item,
like
and then they
FedEx.
deliver it. Yeah, that's just like normal supply chain. But the other one that was popular is that like, so you have all of Uber Eats is like all genres of food. So another really popular company in the US or delivery service is Slice, and they just do pizza.
Oh, okay.
So it's just pizza restaurants. So their niche is like, we are going to be the best and have all the pizza and all the discounts for pizza lovers. Arguably because that's probably the top performing, takeout option in the US. I would imagine. I'm not sure.
Will they do all the brands or just like the artisan ones as well? Or it's like just everything?
They do all.
Okay.
They'll do. So I think they do everything besides like
The major
Papa
ones.
John's, and like they won't do like the big corporate chains, but they'll do every mom and pop shop like in your area, which is pretty cool if the mom and pop shop signs off on it. And obviously during COVID, companies that never did delivery pretty much had to do it in order to survive.
No, absolutely.
So,
No, and also there's like a sort of social aspect to the selling point as well, right? You want to help your local businesses and whatnot.
Yeah, no, for sure. So
To summarize,
we'll bring it all home. So I made some notes. I'm just gonna call it a few that we had. Add a value prop around why someone should, create an account. Have a CTA button above the fold. Use search if you have a large number of products. Making sure you have a streamlined checkout process. Allow checkout as a guest was another really good one. Descriptive CTAs. One-click checkouts, or integrating other payment solutions is always a good way to do it. We talked a lot about making sure you're looking at how users interact with the site. Basically looking at data to justify any design decisions. And lastly, like, is the kind of the catch-all of like, embrace the technology that's coming. And I think that's like the IKEA example, where they kind of double down on having a good digital storefront, and then they also embraced new technologies where they might not be experts on, but now they're a leader in the space because they committed to it and they saw a use case for it to be successful. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it pays off. And I do think that these really difficult times of the COVID and this pandemic actually made people more innovative. They were forced to be a little bit more creative to help make ends meet. And we've unfortunately lost a lot of small businesses along the way, and some companies came out stronger. But there's a lot of learnings here. So I've just been very much after getting vaccinated. I've been in a very reflective phase of what has the last year and a half meant, of course, from a social and economic and whatnot, but also just from as a designer in my day-to-day life, what have I seen? So that's just my take. Those are my summaries. Anything else I missed there, Mustafa?
Yeah, no, I think just again to summarize is, what is it? If you're going to pick one action that you want your user to do, focus on that as your primary thing, and make sure that the funnel is all focused about that. If the goal is to get people to sign up to a newsletter, that's completely fine and noble, but know that if you're optimizing for that, that's what you should do. If your goal is to sell something, then make the whole experience of buying something really easy and delightful to do. So that would be my take.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great way to summarize. Speaking of call to actions, make sure if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at 100 subs. That's a big deal for us. We only launched it like a couple weeks ago. We're very excited. All you have to do is type in Design Huddle Podcast on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also, we'd love the comments. Please comment. We'll try to reply to every comment. And yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in to Design Huddle, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Take care.